I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship, the season of dreams.
So JUCK over.
And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champs, will be remembered for how they came out of that. And welcome into JUCK on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me. We've got a busy, big week here at JUCK on Bucks. On Tuesday night, you guys remember my buddy College Football with Sam. I've had him on here a couple times now. 6 p.m. on Tuesday night over on his channel, Sam and I are going to do a live show. So join us over at College Football with Sam tomorrow night. I'll remind you about it. Then on Thursday, Joe DeLeon will be joining me here. Joe is from Ruffino and Joe, which is a really good college football show. If you've never checked it out, do so. Ruffino and Joe. He's a Notre Dame fan. We'll take it easy on him. Of course, Sam's a Michigan fan. He's a Notre Dame fan. You know what? As we get into next year, I was thinking these top 6, 7, 8 teams in the country, which looks to me like just one big cluster of really good and nothing great. I think it would be a decent idea if we have somebody on from each of those programs, somebody that knows them intimately, and kind of pepper them with questions. So if you've got any questions about Notre Dame for Joe, who's, he's an expert on the team, leave those in the comments and I'll ask him some questions about them. As far as, Sam, we got Michigan covered. My buddy Ryan at Sports Chat 503, we got Oregon covered, or Max from Scoop Duck. My buddy Rock, I've been on a Miami show a couple of times now, a hurricane show. And these dudes are awesome. I really like them. So we got Miami covered. We need a Georgia guy and we need a Texas guy. Now, I usually do research whenever we play somebody like, the playoff teams we played, or even in the regular season, like Indiana and whatnot, and see who their like YouTube guys are. Nobody's like us, where we have like 55, right? Usually there's like 4 main ones, most at, tops, like that's it. And Texas, the first one I stumbled upon was the guy that was saying Ryan Wingo was better than JJ. And at that point, I cut Texas off. I was done. My research was over. So we have to find a Texas guy. But I just see a lot of really good. And Penn State, we need a Penn State guy. Their fans don't really exist, so I don't know if there's any market that caters to them. But I want to hear some homer takes on all these other teams because I see a whole lot of really good. And that's perfect for Ohio State, who is, young. There's a lot of questions about the team. And we know that this team definitely has one thing the rest of them don't. That's championship pedigree, and that matters. Now, I will tell you, when I look at Notre Dame and I look at Marcus Freeman, he has not yet had a class finish in the top 10 in recruiting. Normally, I'd make fun of that, but I'll be damned if he's not hitting at a higher rate than most. Great evaluations, great early development. Something I want to talk to Joe about that, because it is really impressive when you look at the number of young guys that were on that team that made it to the national championship. Very, very impressive how many young guys they were playing, which also gives us a lot of hope as we look at a younger Ohio State team. That Notre Dame team had a ton of first and second year guys, more than this Ohio State team would, should they be able to advance far in the playoffs this upcoming season. So now that we have got signing day in the books, class of 2025 no longer waiting to sign. They're all Buckeyes. Well, almost Buckeyes. They've got to get their black stripe removed before they're officially Buckeyes. But I consider them Buckeyes. In the program, they're not officially Buckeyes yet. But to me, they're Buckeyes. So we're moving on now to the class of 2026. And usually at this point, we would see quite a few more commitments. And there are some fans who are a little bit stressed about that. Our crew's been backed up. They played a long time. We're still hiring coaches. And with the way recruiting has changed in the last couple of years, there's a pretty big part of me that would almost rather not have guys committed this early, because I just feel like playing defense for this long, it just feels harder. It just feels harder than to not have anybody signed at this point. Now, we do got some guys signed. We'll go over them. But when we look at the guys last year that flipped out, quite a few of them were guys that were committed early. Naeem Offord was relatively early. Javon Boggs was the first wide receiver and one of the first few guys in this class. I don't even know where he went. Zahir Mathis, who went to Maryland. Who else? London Merritt. London Merritt was pretty early. He went to Colorado. So it's a long time to play defense. I'm good with it. Who's committed so far? Obviously, the number one wide receiver in the class, Chris Henry Jr., been committed for a very long time in Ohio State. Should they make it from that commitment to signing day, I don't know how long that period of time will have been, but for a guy of his caliber, if they're able to do that, keep him in the fold that long, that will be one heck of a testament to Brian Hartline, to Ryan Day, because he committed very early. And having him as a true freshman with Jeremiah Smith as a junior, hypothetically Julian Sayin in year 2, that would be just game changing. At 6'5", with the ability to move the way he can move, I don't know how you cover those two. I really don't. As usual, the last few years, this is going to be Oregon as Ohio State's biggest threat all the way down the wire. And the other day, I think last weekend he went up there to Eugene. The other day he was wearing an ugly Oregon sweatsuit. It was like a pastel green, which I kind of like the look of pastels. My wife won't let me wear them. She doesn't like me in pastels. So it wasn't really ugly. It was just, like, why is it pastel green? That's not your color. Anyway, Ohio State's strategy when it comes to NIL for kids out of high school, when it comes to game-changing dudes, top 10 caliber players in the country that they really want, they'll go to war in the NIL space for them. They don't carry that philosophy on down the board, which sometimes is very frustrating to me, but especially when the staff puts a lot of time in for a guy. But it's working. It's working very well. Obviously, another top 5 class for the Bucks. But when Chris Henry transferred high schools out of Ohio, went out to Mater Dei, don't forget, we still got the Mater Dei curse that we've yet to break. We thought we were going to break it last year with Jordan Davison. Didn't happen. We've also offered a linebacker out there that we really like in another wide receiver, Caden Dixon-Wyatt. Is there an opportunity for the Buckeyes to break this thing in a big way and get 3 Mater Dei kids, which used to be owned by USC, now owned by Oregon for the last decade? And Chris is right there with them at Mater Dei, a huge Oregon presence, bunch of dudes from Mater Dei at Oregon on their roster. And his relationship with Ryan Day and Brian Hartline is great. Brian Hartline in his first year as an offensive coordinator, could that add that extra to Chris Henry, who loves the idea of it, has come out and talked about it. If I was Oregon, I would play this like this. Like, aside from obviously the huge deal that they're going to give him, I would point to Jeremiah Smith as a freshman and say, don't you want to be that as a freshman? You can't do that at Ohio State when JJ's a junior and you're a freshman. Like, it's all eyes on him. You got the ability to do that, and you can do that out here, but you don't want to be second fiddle. That's how I'd be selling it. Like, if it was me, like, we're going to use DeCorian Moore as much as Ohio State used Jeremiah Smith as a freshman. He's going to be a focal point, which I think he's going to be out there at Oregon. And I'd be selling him on you're next. Now, will it work? I don't know. The Buckeyes also have another wide receiver in the class, Jaden Ricketts. This is an Ohio burner, really fast kid, good hands, heck of an athlete, underrated, I think, as a 4-star, number 250 in the country. He'll continue to climb those rankings. 6 foot, 187. Another pass catcher in the class, courtesy of Keenan Bailey, Corbin Fordham. Got him early, and Keaton's just on a tear. I don't see a flip coming with that kid. You remember his announcement. We played it on here. He was in the woods, and he picked something up and looked at it, and it turns out it was a Buckeye in the end. A really cool video. Mom and Dad did a voiceover. Mom called him Corby Cakes, which I love because my wife calls my middle son Carmy Cakes. So that was cute. But right now, just a 247 composite, 3-star is Corbin. 6'3.5", 215. That's a ridiculous ranking. This kid is an elite pass-catching tight end. And he's from Jacksonville, Florida, out of the Bulls School. Remember that school. That'll come up again later. As we move on in this show, or whenever you hear me talk about rankings, if I don't specify, I'm always using the 24/7 composite rankings. I like the formula that On3 is using better with their industry standards of their composite, which weighs On3 and 247 significantly higher than rivals and ESPN in their formula. But I'm not quite there yet with their internal evaluations, though they have consistently gotten better. And I intended to switch to them this season, but they decided in their final rankings that Devin Sanchez was the number 3 cornerback in the class. DJ Pickett, number 1. Now, DJ Pickett is 6'4", and he's a hell of an athlete. And I can understand why that would be very enticing because he's 6'4". That's kind of freaky. I can see their logic. I can see the pull. But they also made Naeem Offord ahead of Devin. Naeem Offord was number 2. And Naeem Offord is an excellent football player, a Swiss Army knife. He's good at everything. Great with the ball in his hands, a really good cornerback. But as a cornerback, man, there's levels to this, and he isn't on Devin's level. So for that, and specifically that, they're out. We're sticking with 24/7's composite. So the lone defensive recruit right now, signed in the class of 2026, not signed, committed in the class of 2026 to the Buckeyes, Jacob Weatherspoon out of Avon, 5'10", 180. Tim Walton nailed it. This kid is a dynamic athlete, and his film is fun to watch. We're not going to watch that today, but I want to go over the top defensive targets today. The top defensive targets that the Buckeyes are in on, positioned really well on, guys that they've developed good relationships with, that look like realistic possibilities to end up in this class. And a lot of these guys we're going to go over will inevitably end up in this class. There's definitely more guys. We're not going over all of them, but these are all guys that I've watched, many of whom I've talked to, and I think are really awesome players, would be awesome Buckeyes. And I'm excited to show you some of them if you haven't seen them yet. So Jim Knowles, we know, was a very safety-driven defense. That was his thing. And that was a big selling point to top-notch safeties. And there are a couple in the fold in this class. Larry Johnson, the primary driver of all these defensive line recruits. Like, those are Larry's guys. The way he plays defensive linemen, is that going to change? We don't know. But he's showing them clips of Jack and clips of JT. And this is how he plays his defensive line. Ryan Day's talked about being a little more multiple on the defensive front next year, but we don't have a defensive coordinator at this point, so we're not quite sure. It does look like Larry's coming back. Is this his last year? Like, if you're a defensive lineman right now, there's a whole lot of, I don't know about Ohio State. You know what I mean? So that's a tough spot to be in because it's such a vital position to recruit. But let's start with those defensive linemen. And we're going to start with the number 1 defensive lineman in the entire class from Weddington High School in North Carolina. If that sounds familiar, it's because we just got Trajan Odom in the class of 2025 from Weddington High School in North Carolina. And this, of course, is Aiden Harris. And Aiden Harris is a twin brother. Aiden Harris's twin brother is Andrew Harris. And the Harris twins are the nephews of former NFL linebacker and Carolina Panther Thomas Davis. They also have a cousin, Thomas Davis Jr., and they all live together. Now, Thomas Davis Jr. has committed to Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame. The Harris twins are a package deal. They're going to the same school. But one of the biggest ways these two have connected with Larry Johnson is through their faith, which you always like to see. Those create really strong bonds. And the Buckeyes right now are in really good position with Aiden Harris. Let's watch him a few. All right, so this highlight right here is kind of fun here. You got Aiden Harris, number 6, the number 1 defensive lineman in the country at Weddington High School. Number 1 is his twin brother, Andrew Harris, and they're a package deal, not rated nearly as high, but got what it takes maybe to develop into a player. But they've also on this team on that same defensive line have number 9 right there in the middle of your screen there. That's Trajan Odom. He's a Buckeye commit in the class of 2025, so potentially you're looking at a high school defensive line with 3 Ohio State players going against big number 70 in red, who is David Sanders Jr. This game opened up the season, the high school season down in North Carolina, 2 powerhouses in the state that the Buckeyes are gaining a lot of headway in. And there are the twin brothers right there converging on that tackle. So this would be a big pull, not just because obviously he's the number 1 defensive tackle in the country, but this is a nice little pipeline that the Buckeyes are not just developing at Weddington High School, which is usually chock full of talent, but in the state of North Carolina, becoming a little bit of a honey hole And we will take a look at another North Carolina prospect in a minute in Xavier Griffin-Haynes. Just look, that's against David Sanders Jr. right there. Look at him. Number 1 tackle in 2025, a year older than him. Now, they're not in as good of a position with the following prospect as they are with the Harris twins, but they're in a pretty good spot, and that is the number 2 defensive lineman in the country, Bryce Perry Wright. Bryce Perry Wright from Buford High School, Edric Houston's high school, Seth McLaughlin's high school. Buford has pumped out a ton of talented players, and most of his interests are down south, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, Auburn, etc. But he really likes Ohio State. So we'll see how it goes. Dude's a total unit. I would absolutely love to have him, but ultimately, I think he might end up staying down south. We'll see what happens. It looks like it's picking up a little steam. It was hot and then cold, and we'll probably have several periods of that from now till the time he makes his commitment. Now, next up, Bergen Catholic in New Jersey, teammate of 2025 wide receiver Quincy Porter, 5-star. He's got two teammates at Bergen Catholic that Ohio State is after. I like them both a ton. The first one is Jermaine Kinsler, who is rising up the boards. This is a big, tough athlete who looks like he can put on a lot more weight. Long arms, plays high-level football in New Jersey, 4-star top 200 player, the number 1 player in the state of New Jersey, a state that has been great to Ohio State, a defensive lineman who's going to play in the middle of the defensive line. We look at guys from New Jersey, Cody Simon, Jalen McLean, Quincy Porter, of course, Deshaun Stewart, Des Jones, Isaiah West, and defensive lineman Maxwell Roy. They went to St. Joe's Prep, those last two in Philadelphia, but both live in Jersey. So all these Jersey boys, the pipeline from Ohio State and in the New Jersey Catholic school circuit is proving to be very fruitful, as well as North Carolina. When you look at the Weddington connection now, and there is another North Carolina prospect that Ohio State is circling back on, and that's Xavier Griffin-Haynes. This is a 4-star top 125 player. He's the number 11 edge. He's raw, but he's 6'6", 235, and he's a playmaker. Now, the reason I say circle back is because Ohio State was interested in him early on. I talked to him back then. He was all about the Buckeyes, and he wanted to commit, and they weren't ready to accept his commitment. So he committed to North Carolina. He has since decommitted from North Carolina, and Ohio State is looking real good, and that's the kind of body we want out there on the edge. Like we talk about, these guys like Epi Satani-Lay, the longer, wiry type, that he's listed at 235. I don't think he is that. But we're missing those types, and now we're slowly starting to add them, and that's really good. And Xavier Griffin-Haynes will be another one that we really want that I think we're looking very, very good for. And finally, on the defensive line, not just my favorite defensive lineman, but one of my top 2, top 3 favorite guys in this entire class of 2026. Dude is an absolute animal. Shattered football records in the state of Georgia, a really nice young dude. And I think that he has the potential to be a pretty special football player. And that's Deuce Gerald's 4-star top 70 player in the country. The reason he's only a top 70 player in the country is because he's not 6'4". He might not even be 6'2". And this is where I get so irritated with the ranking system. It's like, I get it, but just look at him. Just look at him out there. He's a game wrecker. You look at a guy like Caden McDonald, and Caden's a bit chubby, and probably not a good comp. But I guess to the point with Caden McDonald, though, Caden McDonald also 6'2", and Georgia didn't want him, right? He was the Gwinnett County Player of the Year down in Georgia. Caden McDonald was. But Georgia has a height limit. Like you're going to play at each position. There's a body type, and you got to fit in it or they don't want you. So they didn't want Caden McDonald. Ohio State gets him. Look at him. He's awesome. He's going to anchor a really good defensive line this year at Ohio State. Now, Deuce Gerald's does not fit in their parameters, but Georgia wants him bad. So if that tells you anything, they want to keep him home. All right, here's why Deuce Gerald's is my favorite. Take a look at this kid, just an absolute animal. And keep in mind, look at the names of the competition he's going up against. We're talking Micah DeBose, Alabama, Zaire Addison, Oregon, all a year older than him. I believe he also goes against Michael Carroll in this clip, five-star offensive lineman going to Alabama. And here he is against Micah DeBose, violent with his hands, unbelievably powerful. Gavin Blanchard, that's a Clemson commit right there. Light work. Micah DeBose again. Just a beast, man. They can't contain him. They can't control him. Michael Carroll, that's a 5-star offensive lineman going to Bama. It doesn't even look like a fair match. Zaire Addison, he's going to Oregon. I think Zaire Addison was incredibly underrated. He's going to be awesome. And that's Emmanuel Ahianachu, the number 2 offensive lineman in this class. All right, let's move on to formerly my favorite position on a football team, the linebackers. Now, the linebackers got a very distinct Ohio feel as we start with Storm Miller out of Strongsville. Storm is 6'3", 220. He has surprised everyone with his speed. 4-star top 300 guy. The ranking isn't going to jump off the page, but what does jump off the page is how fast James Laurinaitis offered him and went after him. And it's pretty obvious that James Laurinaitis knows how to identify talent. Storm, one of the top guys on his board. Now, his older brother went to Clemson as an offensive lineman. He grew up an Ohio State fan, and this is going to come down to Ohio State or Clemson for him. All right, next out of Glenville, and this one scared me. So Sincere Johnson out of Glenville High School. Sincere Johnson is a total dude, and James hadn't offered him. Now, James does things his own way. We can see that by the fact that he's not going after the number 1, 2, and 3 linebacker in the country like he could. He's identified his guys, and he does it a little different. So he had offered Storm, he had offered Kobe Clapper, and Sincere didn't have an offer yet. Sincere rated higher by everyone than those couple of guys. And I was thinking maybe he's just not interested in Sincere. Maybe he sees something nobody else does. Maybe he doesn't fit what he wants to do. And then Sincere and the Glenville crew came down for a camp at Ohio State. Okay, Sincere is going to get his offer now. Well, Sincere came down to that camp at 6'3", 235. And there were some rumblings that people thought he might have an issue with his weight. Maybe he was going to end up on the defensive line. I talked to him after that because he thought he was going to, everybody thought he was going to get an offer. So I talked to him after that, and he said, when I play, I'm going to be at 215 when the season starts. And sure enough, he was 215 when the season started, and sure enough, he got his offer. Now, this is a Glenville dude, the Glenville pipeline, but everybody's after him now. Everybody. Bama, USC, A&M, Florida, national recruit, top 100 player in the country. But you got Bryce West. You got Arvell Reese. You got Demarion Witten. In fact, Sincere Johnson changed his number this year so that he could wear the same number that Arvell did. He looks up to Arvell so much. Really mature kid. Let's watch him for a second.
This has to be some kind of 6-day stretch for you. You get the Ohio State offer, I think, last Saturday at the Marshall game.
Yes,
what's it been like for you?
It's been great, just getting love from the guys from the Ohio State offer, but also coming back and working with them to prepare to beat Eds, and that's what we did. So that right there is an amazing feeling. It was amazing, just being able to come to the game and getting told by Coach Dan, Coach Ray Niners that I'm off for Ohio State and I have a future there. That's amazing. As an Ohio kid, obviously that's Ohio high school, and what everyone dreams of.
Well, it's kind of funny because you switched to number 8, I think, in honor of Arvell.
Yes, sir.
And he's there now. What kind of impact does that have on you?
That guy that was my role model in high school, him and Lil Braylon, number 3. And I learned from the best how to play linebacker, how to come out and be dominant. And that right there was great. And I just love that guy. And just love everything they taught me. And I'm just keep moving forward and pass the torch on to the next generation.
Tonight, on a couple of plays, I thought that was Arvell.
Total monster. Total monster. Now, out of Olentangy, and let me tell you guys, this is something. So Olentangy High School has 2 Ohio State prospects that I just think are fantastic. This one up first is CJ Sana. CJ Sana, a 3-star, number 424 in the country, and 24/7 Composite has him as the 34th ranked linebacker in the country. And when you watch him now, this dude's 6'3", 6'3", 225. Take a look at this kid and tell me you think there's 33 linebackers better than this kid in the country. CJ Sana, number 45. Teammates with number 34, Caden Gephardt, both with a Buckeye offer. Could you imagine going against a high school defense with these two hammers? So watch 45, but keep your eye out for 34. CJ Sana, 6'3", 225, 3-star, top 450 player in the country, and he's considerably underrated. He's a dude, man. He's long, he's fast, not super twitched up, but straight line speed. Got a really good feel for the position just his first year playing linebacker. Not sure where he came from. If he came from safety or if he came from, I'm guessing he came from safety. But him and Gephardt at safety together would have been something. Where's 34? Look at that speed, man. This kid's legit. I'm so happy they offered him. Now, what we need to see is him and Gephardt together. I love him. I love him. So here's what we're looking at. We're looking at CJ Sana, who I think is a pretty big Buckeye lean. We're looking at Storm Miller, who I think James is going to get. And we're looking at Sincere Johnson, who I also think James is going to get. Signed, sealed, delivered, an all-Ohio linebacker class. I could not possibly be happier about that. And they're all a little bigger. You know what I mean? They're all a little bigger, huskier studs. And when you look at, Riley Pettijohn, for instance, he's only about 205. He'll get bigger at Ohio State. You look at TJ Alford, a little bit bigger, 215. Eli Lee is about 235. He's a big dude. But he's just kind of adding on a bigger set of dudes this time around and just kind of mixing up body types, which I love. But having 3 Ohio linebackers would just be, I mean, especially when James isn't even from Ohio. Like, man, that's so cool of him to do that. But I love it. I love it so much, and I think they're all just fantastic. Now, there is always the opportunity that you do get the number 1 linebacker in the country. The number 1 linebacker in the country is Tyler Atkinson out of Georgia, and he's not just the best linebacker in the country, but he's one of the best linebacker prospects we've seen in years. At 6'2", 205, top 10 in the 247 composite in the class. The speed that this kid plays with is unmatched. He's everywhere. He finishes. The number of times you see his his feet in the air after making a tackle. Oh, watch this. Coming off the right end. Just the closing speed is wild. When you look at the 2025 linebacker class with TJ Alford and Riley Pettijohn, we talk about Riley Pettijohn and the speed. Riley Pettijohn, amazing, 5-star linebacker. This dude's faster. I mean, he's just wildly fast. But when we talk about what the linebacker room could potentially look like if you were able to add Tyler Atkinson to TJ Alford, Riley Pettijohn, that's just different level stuff than we've had at Ohio State in a long time in the linebacker room. And we're coming off a national championship caliber 2 linebackers with Cody Simon and Sonny Styles. But this is just that next level. So, of course, if you can get him, you're going to get him, and that means most likely one of those other guys gets left out of the class. Or maybe they can swing away to take them all. I don't know, but probably not. Tyler Atkinson is a game-changing dude. We look at good linebackers we've had in the past, speed demons like that, and the only one that really kind of looks like that to me is Ryan Shazier. You look at Ryan Shazier's high school film, looks pretty similar to that. And this kid's going to be a superstar in college. He had said that when he came to Ohio State and visited one time, he said, I want to get back during the season and see what the cold's like. I want to see, everybody's talking about how cold it is. I want to see how cold it really is. So he came and he visited when it was a little colder. I did not get his take on that follow-up, but he's still very interested in Ohio State. When they were going and visiting schools last week. They visited, matter of fact, I might have a picture right here of that visit, but they took the whole crew. So they all kind of split up and went and saw a bunch of prospects. But when it came to Tyler, they all got together and all went and saw Tyler. That is definitely not Tyler. Where's Tyler? Nope, that's Deuce. Everybody went and saw Deuce too. Gotta love that. I don't have it. All right, so Weatherspoon, cornerback 1. Cornerback 2 could have been Vic Singleton. Vic Singleton, a very highly rated 4-star out of Toledo Central Catholic. And he was in my notes here to talk about, as I thought that there was a chance Vic was fading away here, because it looked like he was all Buckeye early on after they offered him. They took a little while to offer him, but when they finally did, looked like he was all Buckeye. He has since committed to Illinois. I don't think that's a commitment that'll stick, but it just felt like the vibes were off for a while with Vic and Ohio State. No matter, because Ohio State and Tim Walton are going after the number 1 cornerback in the class, 5-star, number 22 in the country, trying to get back-to-back number 1 corners in the class. And of course, I'm talking about my hometown guy, my dude, Rock Hill, the best player in the state of Ohio, the best corner in the country. Let me tell you something. Rock Hill is 5'10", 175 pounds. DJ Pickett on threes, number 1 corner. He's 6'4". Devin Sanchez is 6'2". Naeem Offord, 6'1". Rock is 5'10", 175 pounds. Do you know how good you got to be 5'10", 175 pounds, getting ranked the number 1 corner in the class? That is a testament to how special Rock Hill is. And of course, Rock Hill is incredible. Everybody wants him. He's visited all these places several times. Well, USC just once, but he loved his visit out there. He's great. He's great. Just have a quick look at him here. Dad's a JUCK guy. Okay. Rock's dad's a JUCK guy. And, he's a guy who told me that it meant it was a very special moment for the family when that Ohio State offer came. There's no doubt where the heart is in the family, right? But, that's not everything anymore. It's not. I can tell you this, though. It does bother me sometimes when we talk about big-time recruits that we kind of sometimes take for granted that the ones from Ohio are just going to come to Ohio State. This is a kid that everybody wants. And when they go everywhere, it's just a crazy atmosphere. Everybody's making a big fuss. Come here, come here. We need to make sure that we keep that energy up with our local guys, because the more we're seeing it, it's never been smaller. The world, that is. It's never been easier to leave. It's never been easier to go other places. It's never been more enticing. These guys are exposed to all these other programs at a young age. People my age weren't. And you had to really go seek out that information about other schools. These guys got it on their timelines. You know what I mean? All their lives they had. So we got to make sure that we are giving the appropriate love to our hometown guys and not just assuming that they're going to be Buckeyes. You look at Vic. Vic went to Illinois over Ohio State. Get out of here with that nonsense. But Rock's amazing. I think ultimately he ends up a Buckeye. Let's go to safety, and we're going to start with OG Walt's nephew, legitimately his nephew, Simeon Caldwell. Simeon Caldwell, don't know if he'll end up being a safety. 6'3", 185 is what he's listed at. I think he's heavier than 185, but a 4-star, top 100 player in the country, really smart. He also goes to the Bulls School in Jacksonville with Corby Cakes. Him and Corby Cakes are teammates. Corby committed to Ohio State, and this is a big kid, man. I asked him Friday, what's his preference in college, linebacker or safety? He doesn't have a preference. Obviously, in his recruitment with OG Walt being, the dude here, he's not recruiting him like he's his uncle. He's treating him like he's any other recruit, which is how Simeon wants it. Things are going really good between Ohio State and Simeon Caldwell. All right, now we're going to get to, now I told you Deuce Gerald's was one of my 3 favorites in this class. Obviously Rock is my number 1. This dude here, who I wasn't hip to, I got to admit, I was not hip to this kid. And shame on me. But if you don't watch any of if you're someone who doesn't really care about the highlights or the film, and skips through those parts of these episodes. If you only watch one, please watch this one. This is Caden Gebhardt, big safety at 6'2", 200 pounds, and he is CJ Sana's teammate. 3-star, number 595 in the composite. That's insane, right? That's insane. Wait till you see this dude. You look at last year, Coy Parrish from Minnesota. We really wanted him at the end there. Almost got him to flip. He ends up staying loyal to Minnesota, which I kind of loved that he stayed loyal to Minnesota. And as a freshman, he was one of the best freshmen in the Big Ten. Excellent. His high school film was phenomenal. Coy Parrish, fantastic, so fun to watch. I feel like I'm watching it again when I watch Gebhardt. Take a look at this kid. All right, we're checking in on Caden Gebhardt, safety from Olentangy. His linebacker mate, number 45, CJ Sana, just got offered. Gebhardt, 6'2", 200 pounds. 24/7 has him as a 24/7 composite has him as a 3-star. 24/7 internal, he's a 4-star, top 200 player. On 3 has him as a 3-star. That's ridiculous. On 3 has him as the 61st ranked safety in the country. That's insane. This dude is excellent. He's excellent. He's a hammer. He hits like Lathan Ransom. I really love him. Got to keep him in state. Down to Ohio State, Penn State, Clemson, and Wisconsin. Thought to be an Ohio State-Penn State race here, with Penn State maybe being in the lead. Good friends with Ethan Grunkmeyer, who's going to take over at quarterback for Penn State when Drew Aller leaves. And he's been there a lot. They started off the relationship much earlier with him. So the Buckeyes from a hole right here. But, right there in Olentangy. Got to keep him. Absolute hammer. Exciting as hell. Look at this kid. Perfectly fit. Well, I'm not sure what defense we're going to play, but you want this guy, man. Look at this guy. I need him. I got to have him. Okay, next up, we have the number 1 safety in the country, Blaine Bradford out of Louisiana, 6'1", 205, Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, Oregon, all in very good standing with him. What are the odds Ohio State pulls a 5-star out of Louisiana? Not great, but we just saw one leave to USC last cycle. And Brian Kelly, things could go really sideways this year, despite having I wanted to go over schedules with you guys. I'm going to do that in another episode. But LSU this year, here's their big games, okay? Tough games. They play South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Florida at home. Then on the road, they've got Ole Miss, Alabama, Clemson, and Oklahoma. That's a pretty damn tough schedule. So things could go real bad. Kelly could end up getting fired, and if that's the case, we'll be in really good standings with Blaine Bradford. This kid could potentially be a linebacker. He runs track. He's obviously incredibly fast, but the number 1 safety, he's a stud, but he's not my favorite safety. That would be Braylon Womack. Braylon Womack, 6'1", 195. The number 2 safety in the class, 5-star, obviously, from Flowood, Mississippi. Why do I love Braylon Womack so much? Because Braylon Womack, he's a Buckeye. Now, he's from Mississippi, and he is incredibly flattered because not too many kids in Mississippi have ever gotten an Ohio State offer. He loves to talk about that. When I first talked to Braylon Womack when he got his offer last year after camp, we were talking about Ohio State, and a lot of these guys say, yeah, I grew up following the team, or I grew up rooting for Ohio State or something like that. Which Braylon said that, and they all say that. Do they really mean it? Mostly not. They're just talking. They know they're talking to a Buckeye guy. Womack, legitimately a Buckeye fan. How do I know? He started rattling off players, and when he started rattling off players, he brought up KJ Hill. Now, KJ Hill, obviously a really good Buckeye. I mean, Emeka just broke his receptions record. This dude's 17 years old. KJ Hill wasn't really a figure on the national scene. You know what I mean? That wasn't like a nationally talked about player. We knew he was good. We knew he was underrated. But he was talking about, obviously the big time guys, Fields and Olave and Garrett Wilson. KJ Hill, the dude's a legit Buckeye fan from Mississippi. Every time he's ever come up to visit Ohio State, he just lights up. I think the Bucks are going to get him. All right. I don't want to get too excited here because last year around this time, I was talking about Ohio State potentially having the greatest secondary haul in the history of college football with the potential to land Devin Sanchez, Naeem Offord, Dorian Brew, 3 5-star corners at the time, and Fahim Delane and Trey McNutt. Like, it looked like there was an opportunity to do something really unbelievable. This looks pretty damn similar. If you can get Rock and Jacoby Weatherspoon, you can get Braylon Womack, you can get Blaine. Like, you got an opportunity to get the 1 and 2 safety here. However, I'll be honest with you. I want Gebhardt out of those safeties. Like, if they can only get 2, I want Gebhardt. Gebhardt is something special. I think he's something special. And obviously, the number 1 and the number 2, both, you can't really afford to pay 1 and 2 unless one of them just really wants to come to Ohio State, which Womack does, but he's not going to do it without the money. The money has to come. When you're number 1 or number 2, you command the money, and it's got to come. All right, guys, that is our defensive players for 2026 that we're going to go over today. We will sprinkle in some more here and there as we go. Obviously, I will keep you abreast of any movement with any of these guys, and we'll go over sometime later on this week the offensive guys. Depending on what news pops up, we should be hearing about a DC here pretty soon, and of course, we'll cover that when that comes up. But I appreciate you all so much. Please do subscribe and like the video for me. Also, subscribe to my channel, JUCK on CFB. JUCK on CFB, if you could, please. I'm trying to grow the new national channel where I talk like a college football rundown, where I basically go over kind of like the day's headlines, and it's 30-minute episodes, and then I'm going to do some one-offs from that. But that's how I'm going to attack it, and I'm about to start hitting it really hard. So if you could subscribe over there for me, if you'd like to hear about national college football stuff, or if you're just a friend of mine, you could do that for me anyway too. That'd be cool. All right, talk to you guys later.